Thank you, Senator Alexander, and I want to thank both of you gentlemen for your leadership on this very important issue, how we address the maintenance backlog that we recognize as a committee, but really as members of Congress, is so significant, and how we get in front of it. As chairman of the Interior Appropriations Subcommittee, and I know, Senator Alexander, this was your subcommittee a few years ago, just before I took it over, we recognize we've got good faith efforts as appropriators trying to allocate sufficient revenues to just try to get ahead, but we just can't even get ahead. And so how we are creative, how we think a little bit out of the box in terms of how to address this in a way and a manner that is meaningful and significant is going to be very important. I mentioned in my opening statement, we'll have an opportunity to schedule before probably the subcommittee, but if not the subcommittee, then the full committee, a review of both of the proposals that are out there, as well as anything else that might be there, because I agree with you, Senator Alexander. I think that there is an imperative out there. I think that this is a priority of the Secretary's. He has made that clear, and I think we all recognize that, well, we all know and love the parks in our areas and are very passionate and perhaps parochial about that collectively we know that this is a system of parks, and we want to do right by all of them. So I can't flex my muscle to say I want to prioritize everything so that we fix Polychrome Road and we also fix the water and the sewer issues in my park ahead of your park. Don't tell the people back home that I said that I'm not going to do that, because I am going to advocate that we address these. But it has to be a broader, really more comprehensive strategy. So I thank you both for your initiative with that, and also with working with us previously in setting forth the endowment, reaching out to other areas, not just the government sector, but what we can do more to bring in all Americans to support our parks. I think it's clear that these are our treasures, and we want to be able to support them. I do think, Mr. Shafroth, we need to be a little more creative. You know, you see these signs on the roads saying, you know, this section of the road is cleaned up by the Fairbanks Rotary Club. Maybe we need to have little signs on I don't know, your wastewater treatment building that says this is brought to you by Senators Portman and Alexander personally. I don't know, but it does cause me to worry that some of the basic needs, the invisible issues, as Ms. Leonard has pointed out, the underpinnings that make our parks a livable place, that we're not able to garner that support that we would want. I would note that as we talk about some of these ideas, as we talk about how we prioritize deferred maintenance, cyclical maintenance, what authorities we give to the local superintendents for use of fees or revenues that are collected there versus everything going back to Washington, D.C. and then being redirected to the respective areas or the respective parks. We're talking about this at a time that we don't have a director of our national parks. And I know that the Department of the Interior, the Secretary, is looking to fill this position, but I would urge, and if you can take the message back, Ms. McDowell, I would urge that the administration place a priority on this nomination, just as they are clearly placing a priority on how we're going to address the backlog. Because we, on the Appropriations Committee, can figure out how to direct dollars. We, as an authorizing committee, can figure out different strategies, but you need to have the implementer, you need to have the director. And so I would hope that we would be seeing a name come forward soon. I do think that that is important. I've got a whole host of different questions that I'll ask folks for the record, although I think between the committee members that were here, we covered a lot of ground in terms of the ideas. But I just want to throw a little bit of a wild card out there, and this will be directed to you, Mr. Barreca. When we think about different mechanisms for funding, I mean, obviously, Interior looked at raising the fees for individuals, families, seniors, kids to come in, laid out a pretty aggressive fee schedule that nobody liked. They've retracted that, but fees clearly are one avenue that you can bring in more revenues. Not enough to correct the maintenance backlog. I think we all recognize that, but fees do help. But I've thought about the role that Pittman-Robertson model follows. It basically uses the excise tax that is levied on firearms, on ammunition, on archery equipment to fund wildlife restoration projects. In fact, in Alaska, I'm told that the Pittman-Robertson dollars that we have now that are directed to our state have been really quite important, and we've seen an increase in those, and that helps us with the wildlife restoration projects. And you have indicated in your testimony today, you know, the stepped up industry in the outdoor, stepped up activity in the outdoor industry, and what it's meaning from a revenue perspective, and that's good. I think that that's important that we're seeing. But do you think that REI or others that benefit from access to our federal lands would be open to a small fee or a tax on outdoor retailers to help sustain the parks? Is this something that has been out there for discussion, similar again to the Pittman-Robertson model?
Well, thank you for the question and the observation, Chair Murkowski. For sure, the question you raise has been whispered about for many years. I have several observations, and I can go deep and long on the topic, and so maybe the depth and the length is better saved for a conversation with you and or your staff. But a couple high-level observations. One, the excise taxes on what we refer to as hook and bullet, as my understanding, they came into being in the 30s and 40s when fish stocks and animal wildlife were at risk of being overhunted or overfished. And so the fees were about assessed against those who were interested in putting back into the environment or preventing the overfishing and overhunting of certain wildlife. When Americans writ large go into the outdoors, I don't think they're necessarily overusing the dirt that they walk on. And so you don't have the same question around extraction of a resource as you have in the hunting and fishing community. So that's one observation. A second observation is if you unpack the economic data, you'll find that the outdoor recreation economy as an ecosystem is uniquely Main Street and small business. It is spread an inch deep and a nationwide. For one example, REI is considered a large player in the outdoor recreation sector. Our revenue is $2.6 billion. So as a large player, our market share is less than 1/3 of 1%. So there are lots and lots and lots of small businesses that would be impacted by a proposal such as the one that you highlight. And importantly, if you also parse the data, 80% of the revenue in outdoor recreation is actually in trips and travel. So people who sell gear, who sell apparel like we do, we're only 20% of the total. And so if you actually wanted to think about it as a sector that is hundreds of billions and distribute the fee, if you will, equitably, you'd be again taxing hotels, lodges, who themselves already face an extraordinary amount of taxes on top of their hotel bills. You know, I think it's a more complicated question than it might seem at the surface. And I just leave with one final point, which is, you know, in most states they don't tax milk because milk is good for you. And we feel that the outdoors is good for you. So there's no reason to make it harder for people to acquire the things that make their lives better.
Well, I appreciate your comments. You know, it's worth asking. I think again, these are part of a broader discussion about how we can address the issues that we're facing. There wasn't much discussion by any of you about the fee increase that has been proposed. Perhaps if the old one were still in place, that's what this whole hearing would have been about, because I have yet to find anybody that supported it. Although I have heard from some that they just don't feel that that we should be increasing the fees because, to use your analogy here, we want to get you out in the park, so we don't want to overprice it. I think we recognize that, but making sure that we do have an opportunity for people to contribute. That is certainly fair to look at, because I think we recognize that if we fail to do right by our parks, we will have those that will say, okay, you encouraged me to come and visit my park. I did, and it was not positive. I waited too long. The facilities were really miserable. The road was horrible. You don't want to have the bad experience. And Ms. Leonard, you know, in your written testimony, and a little bit in what you shared with the committee here today, you outlined what happens when the only way into the park is blocked. But then I think there's more to that story. When the person who has been blocked on the other side has had their trip inconvenienced, delayed, or inconvenienced in any way because they can't get on the other side. They have to pay far more to get out now, whether it's to fly out, basically to fly out or to wait. And then they don't come back. And in addition to not coming back, they tell their neighbor. So do we have any statistics, Ms. Leonard, in terms of what we're seeing to the return visitors when the park experience, or let's go broader, just the visitor experience has not been what they had dreamed of? I don't know whether ATIA tracks that.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. We do track through the Alaska Visitor Statistics Program visitor numbers, and we know that in that recent study, 60% of visitors said they were very likely or likely to return to Alaska within the next 5 years. 40% of our visitors have been to Alaska previously, but I think to your comment, you touched on it, that in marketing to potential visitors and to our visitors that visit our national parks in Alaska, we can't always control word of mouth marketing. And if if their visitor experience is impacted at one extreme or one level of maybe missing connections or not being able to go on a bus tour in the park and see wildlife viewing, to the other extreme of having safety hazards on that road in particular, will certainly impact their decisions in the future to return to Alaska and to other destinations, other national parks, I think. I think the overall, beyond Alaska's national parks, which I wholeheartedly agree with you, I think are the best national parks in our country, but knowing overall that there are deferred maintenance and issues throughout our park system, it's the intrinsic value that we should hold our national parks to that standard, to having high-quality infrastructure and services for those memorable visitor experiences.
Well, I concur. I do think that we have some solutions. We've been breathing some light into some good life, into some good things. I think the foundation certainly is one that we all want to be counting on, and that may be where we utilize foundation dollars for these less glamorous but most important and these underpinnings of the functionality of our parks. But we've got a lot of work to do. I think that what we've gained here has been helpful. For the record, I will note that there's a lot going on the Hill this morning, and we've had members popping in and out. But I think it's the fair takeaway is that there's a great deal of interest in addressing this. And I would agree with Senator Alexander. I think we have an opportunity with this window to be focused on something that can unite us as members of Congress to do something good and something positive for our country and the outdoor experience. So with that, the committee stands adjourned, and thank you very much.